I have a very bad stigma in my mind about teaching English through YouTube, and I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that this stigma makes a lot of sense. That's why I'm using the word stigma. So I'd like to just kind of explain why I've never wanted to teach English through my YouTube channel. The first reason is it's unoriginal. It's not just a little unoriginal, but extremely unoriginal. If you're a native English speaker and you want to start a YouTube channel for Koreans, and the first thought that would come into your head is to teach English through your channel, which is why there's already a surplus of these types of channels. Another reason I didn't want to make YouTube videos teaching English is I'm really not sure of their efficacy. I've had several Korean friends who ask me questions about truly absurd English slang words, and I'm just thinking, where the hell did you learn that? I had a friend once who asked me about how to use the word boo. Now, 95% of the time the word boo is the sound a ghost or a person makes to scare someone. But in a very few rap songs from the 90s and 2000s, it was a word used to mean significant other, either a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Now, I've never said this word in any seriousness, and as such, anyone teaching this word to a non-native English speaker is obliged to explain that it's a word no one ever uses in real life, and it's only been said very rarely in some rap songs unless it's okay to know the meaning of it. But outside of that, don't spend too much, if any, of your conscious thought on trying to learn it or use it. And this is just the smaller problem of the utility of learning English from YouTube channels that directly teach single words and pieces of grammar. The big problem of teaching English directly through YouTube channels is that it plays on this Korean weakness for learning through direct instruction. There are only so many hours in the day, and really only so many hours in our life. And if you want to do something, whether it be learn a language, start a business, or form deep value relationships with people who are close to you, you want to spend every next hour, every next minute, or even every next second getting the most out of your efforts. And depending on what your level is in a language and how much you've spent on learning a certain part of that language, the most valuable way of using your next studying hour can be radically different. Now, I'm not going to make any claims about being amazing at Korean or even being amazing at learning languages in general, but I am lazy, which has been very beneficial to me. Outwardly being lazy sucks, but if you're lazy and you wish to compete with the non-lazy, you must work more efficiently. And through my laziness, I've strived to be more and more efficient. And this longing for efficiency, mixed with my witnessing of my Korean friends struggling with English, made me come up with an insight into language learning, which may not be super original, but it's this. The more beginner you are in a language, the more rote learning you need. And the more advanced you become, the more practice you need. When you start off in a language, you need to memorize words and grammar structures. That's just how it is. You can't start speaking or even understand language unless you know at least some of the vocabulary and grammar involved in the language. Thus, memorizing words and grammar structures is extremely important, and every next hour of studying you spend as a beginner doing those things really unlocks a huge amount of increased proficiency. And on the flip side, if you are a beginner, each hour of study you spend reading advanced literature and watching movies in that target language is much less effective than the memorization of words. I know this is nothing groundbreaking, but to give a good example, if someone is just starting off in English, they should probably set the rote memorization of the easiest 2,000 words in simple grammar forms as a very high priority and spend little to no time trying to read and understand Shakespeare. And they should even probably spend little to no time watching movies and television. I know people have this idea that you should be watching TV and movies and listening to music to get an ear for the language, but in my opinion, that doesn't help nearly as much as just memorizing more of the basic words you need. Now, on the flip side, when you are more advanced, you do want to spend much more time practicing English. By practicing, I mean not just rotely memorizing words. I mean watching movies, listening to music, writing a diary or a journal, and yes, if you have the opportunity, speaking with someone, preferably a native speaker. The more advanced you get, the more of these types of natural practicing you should do, and the more time you spend just rotely memorizing words, the more time you're wasting. This is one of my beefs with a lot of the YouTubers teaching English these days. They push Korean people to do something that is not necessarily very useful for them at their level. Many Korean people are a lot better at English than they realize, and they should be just watching American TV shows and movies and watch a YouTube that is not targeted at teaching English. And I know I'm not really revealing any amazing secrets here, but there is a desire, this lust, many Korean people tend to have to learn in a very direct manner that works very well in some areas, but really fails people in other areas like learning a foreign language, especially as a person gets more and more advanced. And I think these YouTube channels that teach English in this direct, here's a word and here's a definition manner, often tempt Korean people to spend an hour doing things that are more useful for beginners instead of watching TV shows, which would be more beneficial to an intermediate or advanced English language learner. And I know it sounds like I'm being overly critical, and I'm really not trying to stress this as the worst thing in the world or act like these YouTube channels aren't helpful, because they most certainly are. I just don't like the fact that it plays to that Korean style of education, which is making it so impossible for Korean people to truly master the English language. And the fact is, I don't want to spend 10 hours making a video that would help contribute to this admittedly not major, but still real problem. And I've also made a realization about my own YouTube channel. Sometimes when meeting new Korean people, they'll recognize me and say something like, oh, I like your YouTube channel so much. And it's funny because all the people around us are very surprised because they have no fucking clue who I am. And the people will ask the person that recognizes me what my YouTube channel is about, and the person will reply, it's an interesting channel that has really helped me with my English. And this always made me feel pretty embarrassed. I'm always afraid that the people listening to this response will immediately get that picture of the typical Weigukin trying super hard to court Korean viewers by being a guy who just teaches these shitty little slang snippets. Let me explicitly give an example of a shitty little slang phrase you may have learned that no native speaker ever really says. The word wheels obviously means those little circular rubber things you can see on cars and bicycles and whatnot. But sometimes, let me be more explicit, almost never, the word wheels can refer to the actual car itself. I'm not even sure exactly where you see this kind of slang used, but it exists. And I promise you, if you try to use this in a phrase, it will at best sound awkward and at worst be unintelligible in the context you use it. But I'm sure other YouTubers courting a Korean audience are glad to throw this out there because, well, it's more content to throw out in the world. Learning that wheels can very, very, very infrequently mean a car doesn't directly hurt you, but the 5 minutes you spent learning the English piece of slang that basically no one uses could have been used on watching an English TV show or movie that would have really helped you more. And thus it's kind of a waste of your time. And now that I have explained why I really have tried to not directly teach any English through my channel, let me explain why in the future I will. I've kind of realized I'm incidentally teaching English in the way that I've just said was better for intermediate and advanced learners, which is by just making content that contains new terms you may have never heard before and with a good translation. If you're a Korean person watching this video and you're interested in learning English, I accidentally taught you the phrase significant other, which means a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or fiance or samtan saram or whatever. It's a super useful little piece of English that is used frequently and really is the only word that we have to encompass anyone that you are romantically engaged with, whether that relationship is as serious as marriage or someone you're just kind of dating. It is roughly 1 million times more useful than using the word boo. I've also realized that I have some insights into teaching some good words that maybe not so many people have thought about teaching. One of the main goals of what I'm trying to do with all of my videos is to give a point of view that may not be 100% original, but at least tries to be somewhat original. And in that same vein, when I do teach some little slang words here and there, I promise they will always be either useful things you've never heard, or at least some piece of English that is explained in an interesting way which will make them naturally stick in your mind. And if I get really good at these videos, maybe all of the above. I've often tried to convince my Korean friends to take pride in Hangul and the Korean language because of how often I see English words creeping into Korean. But now I've also realized how very important English is. I know this is nothing new, but English is the language of so much music and television. It's the language of so many of the world's most popular movies and media. It's the language of the internet, and in many ways, it's the language of humans. It's the one skill you learn in high school and university that you'll actually get a use out of. I never learned English as a foreign language in school, but I feel like as important as math and history are, I've never found a real solid direct use for them in life. Whereas English can be used for travel, can be used for work, can be used for enjoyment of entertainment, and can be used to connect to us, to people and places we'd have no ability to connect to if we all didn't have some common language to share these ideas in. English is super important, and I've also seen my Korean friends really struggling with it. So let me say this, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to make videos directly teaching English, but it is something that I have to put more of my time and effort into. I make these videos and I hope they can be useful for intermediate and advanced learners to naturally get some or a lot of practice out of. And I post my translations on my website, but I've also realized that I think I can also be someone that shines a light on some more interesting and fun nuances between the Korean and English languages. I'm going to do my best, guys. Wish me luck.